Thank you very much for listening to this week's talk on the Sedra of Vayeshev Shabbos Chanuka. And we are dedicating this learning to the safe and speedy release of all of the hostages remaining in Gaza and the safety and security and success of all of the soldiers and all of the people in Eretz Yisrael to be, please God, guarded by Hashem and achieve their objectives of their missions. And there are, I think at this time of year, as we're approaching Hanukkah, the first night of Hanukkah on Thursday night, and we are remembering the festival of Hanukkah and the celebration of light in a time of darkness. And as is so often the case, always the case, that we are living these events real time, albeit in different ways. And I think that we can really conceptualize all of this if we think of sparks in the darkness and I want to focus on three particular sparks at this time. The first is the spark of this heroism. The second is the spark of unity. And the third is the spark of limitations of human vision and the lessons that we learn from this week's Sedra that really help us understand that when we are in a certain point in our lives, undergoing challenge, we cannot ever imagine coming out of a darkness, and the encouragement that we get from the events that happen in this week's Sedra are so relevant and really help us lift ourselves up at this time. So the first is the spark of heroism, and this links up with certain blessings that we say when we light the Hanukkah candles. On the first night of Hanukkah, we make three blessings. We make Lahadlik Ner Shel Hanukkah, we make She'ason Nisim Lavaseinu, and then we make Shehechionu V'Kiyamanu V'Giyu Lazman Hazeh. We celebrate the fact that we are alive to benefit from this festival, to take the inspiration from this festival. We take nothing for granted. Now, the Shechionu Bracha is something that we make on every first of going through something in the year. When we have another Yontif, we will make a Shechionu blessing. But there's usually one bracha for the mitzvah. In the case of Hanukkah, we have two brachas. And the second bracha that we make, Bayomim Hahem Bazman Hazeh, the Nisim, the miracles that Hashem performed in those days, at this season, we commemorate the date. And there was a Devar Torah given by Rabbi Branda from Torah Or Stone, and he commented on certain manuscripts that have a slightly different version. It's Bayomim Hahem Ubizman Hazeh, that we are acknowledging that there were miracles in those days and at this time. And I think that when we look at the heroism, and just to focus a moment on specific examples, there are so many stories that are going round, and I just wanted to highlight certain individuals that Rabbi Branda referenced in his talk. And the first is Elchanan Kalmanson, who, when he heard of what was happening on Simchas Torah, together with his brother and his nephew, he just drove down to the kibbutz of Be'eri, which was experiencing one of the worst attacks of all of the evil that happened on that day. And he miraculously, with his incredible courage and bravery, together with those family members, he managed to save so many people who potentially could have been more victims of this heinous crime that was committed on that day. And Zichrono Livracha, his memory is for a blessing. And we are going to get constant light from that courage, from that act of selfless heroism. And this is going to be something that inspires us to do everything that we are meant to be doing vis-a-vis our commitment to Hashem, to the people around us, to be inspired by that heroism that Elchanan displayed on that day. And another example to mention here is Anna Eliakim Shapira. and the story of his heroism standing at the front of a shelter. There were 7 or so grenades being thrown in, and he threw them back out. There was a packed shelter behind him of people who were desperately trying to shelter from the bombs, the grenades, the gunshots that were being thrown their way, and he was blocking them. And the final grenade that was thrown in, he took that blast with his body, and he minimized that explosion for the people behind him in the shelter. And again, that spark of incredible heroism and courage that is going to be a constant source of light to us. And the second spark, the spark of our unity, and we've mentioned this, but I think as we go towards Hanukkah and we remember this festival of light and encouragement, and how we beat away darkness and despair by tapping into the history, but also seeing how it continues to exist with us right now. And this is the beautiful posuk that says, Uru'u ba'ori asher zoreach alechem, which is a posuk from Yeshaya, continuing the famous words of a song that references Anovim, Higia Zman Legulaschem. And we are davening that this Geula, this private Geula, if we like, limited Geula for the redemption of all of those who are captive, but also our national Geula, our national redemption. Please God to be able to witness the miracles, continued miracles, as Hashem protects us and saves us from all of the challenges, and we go towards Moshiach. And this posuk, that we see the light, and this is the light of the unity that is shining on the faces of Klal Yisrael, and this is something that, again, we can never take for granted. But we are, as we approach Hanukkah, we are going to feel that light shining upon us, and that light will emanate from our faces. This is the light of Hashem and Hashem's support and Hashem's deliverance of us from these troubles that we are facing. And the third spark to focus on is the spark of limitations of human vision. And the reason that that's a spark, because we can use it to encourage us when we are down, when we look around us and we see terrible things that have happened, and we see responses from the world that we could never understand if we lived for eternity. And it can be very demoralizing. But if we look at, first of all, the lesson from Yaakov Avinu in this week's Sedra, if we go to Perek Lamed Zayin, Posuk Lamed Daled, and these few verses describe Yaakov's reaction when he is confronted with the brothers, his sons, the brothers of Yosef, showing him Yosef's coat of many colors, and that coat is bloodied and there is no Yosef there. So Yaakov puts 2 and 2 together. Vayakira, and he recognized it. So Yaakov recognized the coat. Vayomer kusonis beni chaya ra'a achalasuhu. And he said, it is the coat of my son. An evil beast devoured him. Toraf, Yosef has surely been torn to bits. Vayikra Yaakov simlosov, and Yaakov tore his garments. Vayosem sak b'mosnov, and he put sackcloth on his loins. Vayisabel al bano, and he mourned for his son Yomim Rabim, many days. Vayakumu chol banov v'chol banosov, and all his sons and all his daughters rose to comfort him, lenachamo, to comfort him. Vayomain lehisnachem, and he refused to be comforted. Vayomer, and he said, Ki ered el beni ovel, for I will go down to the grave mourning, Sha'ola, ovel Sha'ola, to the grave mourning. Vayevk osov oviv, and his father cried for him. And at that point, if we would have asked Yaakov, was there any possibility that he would emerge from this state of darkness, but that he could envisage any kind of twist that would lift him up, that would take him out? From the words of this pasuk, these pasukim, I think it's very hard to imagine that Yaakov could have dreamed that anything good. And meanwhile, the reality was so far from what he, with justification, had assumed was the case. And so we too, we can learn, just like this is a human reality. We are limited. We see events, we interpret these events, and we have to learn to put our faith and trust in Hashem. And whatever we are experiencing at any given moment, individually or nationally, we can still just put our faith and trust in Hashem, and with that feeling of encouragement, we automatically go to a better place. And then there is a very interesting connection with the halachas of Chanukah, which also identify limitations of human vision, and link with this week's Sedra that is always read around the time of Chanukah, most often Shabbos Chanuka, that we read the Sedra of Vayeshev. And we learn the halacha, and this is in the Gemara in Shabbos 21b and 22a. And the halacha is that we cannot put a menorah higher than 22 cubits, because we are, at that point, it will not be properly visible from the street, and a fundamental part of the miracle of the point of lighting the menorah is the publication of the miracle of Chanukah, Pirsume Nisa, as it's referred to in Hebrew. And we learn the halacha that cannot be, if it is higher than 22 cubits, human eye is not going to register it. And we learn this halacha from chapter 37, verse 25. 24, Vayikochehu, and they took him, this is referring to the brothers, Vayashlichehu Oser Habora, and they threw him into the pit, Vahabor Reik Ein Bo Mayim, and the pit was empty, there was no water. And Rashi comments on this, and it's also developed in the Gemara, there was no water, but there were snakes and scorpions. And the brothers were not aware of this snakes and scorpions. The fact that they couldn't see, they couldn't see that there was no water, and therefore they didn't know to be aware that there were snakes and scorpions. So when they threw Yosef into the pit, they thought they were just going to decide what to do with him next, and then he would be okay. So Yosef, who was at close quarters in the bottom of that pit, could see the snakes and the scorpions. So Yosef HaTzadik was aware that he had been saved by an open miracle, because according to the laws of nature, those poisonous creatures should have bitten him and killed him. So we learn again that we don't know sometimes, we are unaware of what is an open miracle, because we cannot see it. What is a miracle that is cloaked behind veils of nature? But in all of these cases, linking up to the message of Chanukah, linking up to this fact that miracles were performed in the past for our nation and continue to be performed on an ongoing basis, and really taking encouragement from all of these messages that are so timely as we read them in the Sedra that we are going to be reading this very Shabbos, and also looking at the slightly different versions of blessings that we say when we light the Hanukkah candles, and realizing that they are describing the events that we are going through right now. And please God, we should merit that all our prayers should be answered, all the captives should be returned, and all of the soldiers blessed with success in their mission blessed with refuah shalema wherever they need it. Wishing everybody Shabbat Shalom and Chanukah Sameach.